Hello everyone. This is the 10th part of the story, Blade God of Blood. Chapter 19 Preparation. Putting down the phone, both Alexandra and Bert sneered, "Sincerity my ass." Alexandra immediately started calling the others and need half of the elixir. In your dream, she wouldn't even give others a fragment. After all, the elixir represents the life of the hand union. Alexandra said, "Bakudo, Sao and Murakami, it's time to reunite the five fingers." Bert didn't call anyone. He just used the purple man virus to control Yoshioka, and then asked him to leave here and return to Murakami's side. Mercury looked at Yoshioka, who staggered away, and asked a little worriedly, "Blood God, after he leaves, will your control ability still be effective?" "Effective, as long as it is not discovered, it will always be effective," Bert said. "The Hand Association should not be able to find out that Yoshioka is being controlled. After all, they are warriors, not magicians." "That's good, Blood God. This move is really powerful," Mercury said with envy. She had no doubts at all. "Isn't it natural for the Blood God to control others with blood?" Bert laughed. "That's right, my blood shadow art is the best in the world." Madame Gao complained. "I said that's not martial arts." Bert rolled his eyes and said to Mercury, "Pack up, let's go to the security company." "Are you saying that the people of the Hand Association know Qigong, and they have lived for hundreds of years, and can even be resurrected?" Frank looked at Bert as if he were teasing him, and Snowman beside him also asked in confusion, "Blood God, isn't this a bit wrong? Ninjas are from Japan and Qigong is from China, right? It's not the same system at all. A transnational crime syndicate can't work?" Bert said angrily, "That is how Marvel set it up, what can he do?" "Although the main force of the Hand Union is the ninjas from Japan, their leaders are 5 traders from Kunlun, China. In addition, they also believe in the evil demon beast, and they have done many things that are devoid of conscience and indignant." Bert briefly introduced the sentence, and then said, "And our goal is to eliminate the Hand Union." Frank said with some embarrassment, "Bert, the most important thing in war is to know the strength of both sides. In your Chinese art of warfare, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you will be victorious in every battle, but Qigong, ninja, etc. are beyond my imagination. It is impossible to accurately judge the strength of the hand." "It's simple, Madame Gao, you fight with Snowman." Bert smiled and said, "Snowman, be careful, your strength is roughly equivalent to the subordinates of the hand, and Madame Gao is one of the 5 fingers." Snowman looked at Madame Gao, who seemed like she can be blown down by a gust of wind, and said in disbelief, "Blood God, are you sure I can't beat her?" Frank has the same doubt. Westerners have a deep-rooted idea the more muscles, the stronger, so their beauties always like men with muscles, and the bigger the muscles, the more they like. "You'll know when you hit it." Bert didn't say much, and with Mercury, Frank backed away, leaving the battlefield to Snowman and the expressionless Madame Gao. Madame Gao turned to Bert and asked, "Can I be serious? I want to hit people right now." Bert smiled and said, "Whatever. A vampire can't be beaten to death anyway." "That's good." Madame Gao nodded. She was shaking with anger in her eyes, but she was still under Bert's control. After all, the virus had invaded her brain. "Old lady, be careful with your tongue." Madame Gao's words made Snowman a little annoyed. He practiced free combat. He came to Madame Gao quickly and tried to punch Madame Gao in the face. Madame Gao, who seemed to be extremely vulnerable, immediately stepped aside after Snowman attacked, and then pushed out her palm like a thunderbolt, and Snowman flew out like a kite with a broken string. He slammed into the wall with a loud bang, denting the wall. This was not over yet. Madame Gao was full of anger. She finally had a chance to vent, and immediately slapped Snowman on the wall with a palm, and with another bang, Snowman directly broke through the wall and flew out. After a while, there was a thumping sound from outside, and Bert asked Mercury silently, "How many floors are here?" Mercury answered expressionlessly, 7 floors. "Take someone to rescue him." He didn't believe what I said, he deserves it. Bert said angrily. Mercury immediately went out and called someone. This is a high-level conference room. Only a few of them were here. Bert thought to himself. He is really weak. Should I let Snowman learn Wing Chun? Donnie Yen learned Wing Chun, so can he. Note: Ip Man, also known as Yip Man, was a Hong Kong-based Cantonese martial artist and a Grand Master of the martial art Wing Chun. Note end. The scene just now made Frank's eyes almost fall. A weak old lady beat someone through the wall. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never believe it. This is a Kunlun elite warrior who has lived for hundreds of years. In fact, this is not her strongest strength. If it was decades ago, she could blow up the tank with one palm. Bert smiled and said to Frank, Frank said with a wry smile, I believe what you said now. Are all hands at this level? No, only 5 fingers are at this level. The rest of the ninjas are divided into upper, middle, and lower level ninjas. The upper ninja has chi, and the level is about the same as that of Snowman. As for mid and lower ninjas, although they have no chi, they are not too bad. After all, they have lived for so many years. Bert said. In addition, they can be resurrected, so they are not afraid of death, and often die with the enemy with bombs. Frank made an estimate and frowned. This battle is not so easy to fight. It's not that hard to fight. I can deal with the 5 fingers of the hand. Bert smiled and said, and we have Madame Gao, and the Hand Association doesn't know that she is under my control. If that's the case, then the situation is completely different. Frank rejoiced. But it requires strict arrangements. The Hand Society has done so many evil things and has not been eradicated. It is not so easy. Bert laughed and said, then I will trouble our instructor Castle. The $1 million annual salary is not so easy to earn. Frank said so, but his expression was quite excited. For a man of iron and blood like him, what he liked most was the battlefield. For the sake of his family, he left the army to become an instructor, but that doesn't mean he doesn't want to relive the old gunpowder. Frank said skillfully, I need more information, the specific strength of the Hand Association, and the manpower they can bring. Bert said, Madame Gao, come and tell him the information he asked for. Madame Gao nodded expressionlessly. Frank glanced at her and asked Bert, is your means of control firm? Bert said, it is 100% firm. My blood is controlling her body. That's good. Frank didn't doubt anything. It is the blood god who uses blood to control others, which couldn't be more reasonable. When Frank asked Madame Gao for information, Mercury had already brought someone to rescue Snowman. Although Snowman was not seriously injured, he regained his mobility after drinking some blood. Mercury asked coldly, do you know what you did wrong? My mistake was to underestimate the enemy. I didn't expect that old lady to be so powerful. Snowman smiled bitterly while clutching his aching chest. Several of his ribs were broken, and he needed time to recover slowly. Your mistake is not in underestimating the enemy, but in not believing in the blood god. Mercury shouted coldly. The blood god said she is very strong. You dare not believe him? Who gave you everything you thought you had today? What? Snowman was stunned for a moment, and then he broke out in cold sweat. He hurriedly said, I know I was wrong. I will immediately go to the blood god to admit my mistake and ask for his forgiveness. Mercury said, don't make such a mistake again. No matter what the blood god says, you must believe it. Everything you have is given by the blood god. Snowman nodded very seriously, and then he asked hesitantly, why are you saying this to me? You are pure blood, and I am just a mixed blood. You are indeed mixed blood, but mixed blood is also a vampire. Mercury said, I don't want the security company to fall into the hands of humans. You must hold the position of the person in charge, and you must not let someone else rob it. Snowman knew who Mercury was talking about, he said. Frank is very good and very capable. I admire him very much, but the position of the person in charge can only be mine. That's good. Mercury nodded with satisfaction, and then she returned to the conference room with Snowman. Madame Gao was introducing the situation of hand. This time, the other 4 fingers of hand will be all together in the meeting, and there are about 200 ninjas they can use. Bert saw Mercury and Snowman coming back, motioned them to listen, and then said to Madame Gao, 200 ninjas? Your hand union is quite powerful in New York. 200 ninjas don't sound like much, but the ninjas are all direct descendants, and there are a large number of sideline thugs in the Hand Association. If necessary, they can draw thousands of people in minutes. Bert's vampire clan security company plus the guards under Mercury can only bring up to 150 or so good players who can be used in a short period. The main force of the vampire clan is in the vampire police station, busy every day like a dog. After all, a new order has to be established, Wang Bert's new order. This time the negotiation is related to the elixir, and Hand will only use the direct line. Madame Gao said, the Hand Association still has a large number of people in Japan and other places. I suggest you negotiate with them as soon as possible so that they don't transfer people from other places. Of course. Bert nodded and continued to ask. Besides, how many upper and middle-level ninjas can they bring, and where will they choose to negotiate? The Rand Group has a dock in Hell's Kitchen, and they should choose to negotiate with you there because the Rand Group has been controlled by our hands. In the following time, Bert and Frank carefully inquired about all kinds of information, and it took more than an hour before they finished speaking. Madame Gao was very upset. These bastards did not even give the old lady a chair to sit on. Where have the manners of respecting the elders gone? Snowman didn't know what Madame Gao was thinking, otherwise he would complain. You an old lady? My ribs are still broken. Frank drank some water and said to Bert, we can win this battle. Then it's up to you. Bert laughed loudly. Punisher's promise is quite reliable. After listening to the information, Snowman finally had the opportunity to apologize to Bert. He bowed his head and said, Blood God, I should have believed your words, please forgive me. Seeing that Snowman took the initiative to admit his mistake, Bert's anger subsided a little, and he said, Mistakes can be corrected, so don't make the same mistakes again in the future. Yes, Blood God. Snowman nodded quickly, and at the same time gave Mercury a grateful glance. Without her guidance, this should not be easy. Mercury ignored Snowman because her phone was ringing. She walked to the side to answer the phone, came back a moment later, and said, Blood God, Ms. Carter is over there in the cafe, she wants to see you. I'm going to see her. Bert nodded to Frank, letting him concentrate on strategizing, and he took Mercury back to the cafe. Seeing Bert, Carter, who looked exceptionally capable in a lady's suit, asked straight to the point. Are you going to short the Stark Group? Bert sat down, nodded, and said, Yes, is that wrong? Carter stared closely at Bert and said, Tony was attacked in the Middle East. I don't know if he is alive or dead. Bert smiled and said, It seems that my judgment is correct, Mercury. We can start the financial company. Yes, Blood God. Mercury immediately went out to make a call. At this time, shorting the Stark Group would make a lot of money. The judgment of the Blood God was accurate. Carter asked again, You knew this would happen? Bert said, I received some inside information, Ms. Carter. You don't have to stare at me like that. I didn't do this. I don't have such a big grudge against Tony. He helped me design a mask few days ago. Carter said, Then do you know who did it? Tony is my nephew. I don't want him to have any accident. Bert didn't answer quickly and asked, Ms. Carter, as we all know, the U.S. military likes to use Stark Group weapons the most, so do you know what weapons terrorists like to use the most? What weapon? It's also the weapon of the Stark Group. The weapon that attacked Tony may have been designed by him. Carter said loudly, That is impossible. Stark Group will not sell weapons to terrorists. Bert said lightly, Ms. Carter, the times are different. Tony's attack is the fault of the Stark Group itself. There's only so much I can tell you. Carter was stunned for a moment, and asked thoughtfully, You mean the Stark Group is behind this? Bert didn't say anything more. He changed the subject and asked, Ms. Carter, is the formation of the Blood God Group going smoothly? When Carter heard the words, she could only put down her doubts and nodded. It's good, and it has gone from chaos to the right track, but there is a problem with the blood department. If you want to study artificial blood, you must find a real expert, and such experts are already hired by other companies or looking down on us, as this is a new company. I plan to go back to England in a few days. I have a lot of connections there, and should be able to hire some good experts. That's good. Bert thought for a while and asked, Have you heard of the Rand Group? I've heard that it is a large company with a market value of nearly 10 billion, mainly engaged in medicine, and also has various businesses such as real estate. Carter nodded. To be a good president, she did lots of research. The Rand Group has been controlled by the Hand Union. I will eliminate the Hand in a few days, and then we will be able to take over Rand Group. Bert said, You prepare a plan to hollow out the Rand Group's medical department, and then use them for our blood department. Control the Rand Group? Carter was stunned for a moment. A large group with a market value of nearly 10 billion. What does it mean to control it? By the way, it looks like you can make a lot of money by getting the Hand Union this time? Bert touched his chin and muttered to himself. What can I do? I'm already so rich, but now I'm going to become even richer? Chapter 20 War. Hearing Bert's words, Carter was speechless. The blood god was fine with everything else, but sometimes he would get carried away. It's a good plan to hollow out the Rand Group? Carter asked. However, even if it's under Hand's control, it will not be easy, right? Those shareholders won't sell their shares. Hand has been using Rand Group to sell illegal drugs and to launder money. As long as we get evidence, those shareholders must sell the pharmaceutical company to us at a low price if they don't want their stock to become waste paper. Bert smiled and said, Very low price. Carter asked again. What about the funds? The funds of the Blood God Group seem to be used to short Stark Industries. If we win against Hand, we will naturally have funds. We will not be short of money. Bert took a cup of tea and took a sip. She thought about it and asked, Can you find Tony? Yes, but I don't have the time and I don't want to go to the Middle East. Ms. Carter, you don't have to worry so much. I know Tony's fortune. He won't die so easily. Bert said lightly, You kidding me, right? The beautiful Manhattan is here for me, and you want me to go to the Middle East to eat sand? Besides, this is a necessary experience for Tony Stark. Only in this way can he become the real Iron Man. Well, I'll go back first and prepare to hollow out the Rand Group. Carter didn't say anything more, got up, and left. She had already obtained the information she wanted. As for asking Bert to find Tony, that was something that S.H.I.E.L.D. should consider. Bert asked Natasha to escort Carter, while he looked up at the TV in front of him, where the news of the Osborne Group was playing. The Osborne Group has officially completed the transformation of the power grid in the city. From tomorrow, Osborne Group will use biopower technology to provide electricity to the whole city. Biopower generation is not only cheap but also environment-friendly. Looking at Norman Osborn, who was smiling like a flower on TV, Bert shook his head. When Iron Man returns, the good days of the Osborne Group will come to an end. Bert murmured to himself, Osborne! 2 nights later, the moon is bright and the stars are thin, and the Rand Group is on the pier of Hell's Kitchen. 2 groups of people are carefully checking everything on the pier to avoid an ambush. The Vampire Clan is responsible for the inspection, Snowman along with 50 well-armed elites, while Hand Group inspects the bandaged ninja Nobu Yoshioka, who brought 50 ninjas. These ninjas are also fully armed, and they look a little weird. After a while, the 2 groups were all checked, and then they confronted each other while radioing to inform their boss that everything was safe. Soon, 2 cars drove into the pier from different directions. The car on the left was an old-fashioned Rolls-Royce. After parking, Bert walked out with Mercury and Madame Gao. The car on the right is a black Toyota with the 4 fingers of Hand, Alexandra Reed, Bakuto, Sawand, and Murakami. more than 100 people from both sides confronted each other on the dock. This is the time, place, and number of people they agreed on. "Welcome, everyone from Hand Association." Bert laughed and walked forward with Mercury and Madame Gao, and the four of Alexandra greeted them with smiles. "Blood God, we finally meet." "Blood God is still too young. Does he think we will negotiate with him?" Alexandra Reed, who looks like a lady on the outside, sneered in her heart. This pier is a neutral site on the surface, but in fact, it is owned by their hand. To receive illegal drugs, they secretly built some basements on the pier. At this moment, more than 100 ninjas are hiding in those basements. As long as she gives an order, they will rush out and kill the vampire clan with ultraviolet rays and silver bullets. They want to divide the keel, dream on. At the same time, a figure quietly came to the pier and carefully hid behind the container, but it was Daredevil, who followed those ninjas over. Seeing such a big tension between the two sides, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Tonight, there will be a battle. On the pier, two groups of people walked to the middle and shook hands with each other. Alexandra said to Bert, "Blood God, please send over Madame Gao." "Sure." Bert knew what Alexandra meant and nodded. Madame Gao walked to Alexandra tremblingly with a cane. Alexandra asked her with her eyes, and Madame Gao responded with a nod. Alexandra was relieved immediately. In this battle, the only variable is the strength of the Blood God. Nobu Yoshioka was already got knocked out by Mercury before and did not know how strong the Blood God was. Now Madame Gao agrees with her plan, which means the Blood God can handle them all. Soon Madame Gao walked behind Alexandra. Alexandra was just about to speak when suddenly, 3 explosions came from the ground, and the pier shook because of it. Then, a lot of flames and smoke came out from 3 places. "This is?" Alexandra was shocked when she saw the smoke because it was where the ninjas were hiding. Before she could react, she suddenly sensed danger and hurriedly turned to the side, but it was still a little late, and blood-red daggers pierced her back from behind. When Alexandra was stabbed in the back, 2 things happened at the same time. The first was that a sniper rifle bullet came from the left and hit Sawan's left thigh, which shattered the thigh in an instant. Flesh and blood blew out as Sawan's attention is drawn to the explosion. Another thing is that 5 people surfaced under the sea at the pier, each carrying a rocket launcher on their shoulders, and then they pulled the trigger in unison, and the rockets roared and crashed among the ninjas. The ninjas were bombed with launchers, and they were shattered into flesh and blood, and many of them died on the spot without even screaming. Before the remaining ninjas could react, the vampire race elites who had been prepared for a long time immediately raised their rifles and shot them frantically. The ninjas screamed and fell one after another. At the same time, vampires sprang up from the sea to join the battle. Vampires can go without breathing for a long time. From the explosion of the basement to the shooting of the ninjas, it only took a few seconds, but in just a few seconds, Hand suffered heavy casualties. "Gao, you betrayed us!" Alexandra, who was stabbed in the back, let out a roar, jumped up, and kicked Madame Gao. Madame Gao released the dagger, and used her arm to resist Alexandra's attack. With a bang, she took a few steps back. "Would you believe it if I said I didn't?" Madame Gao sighed, holding her crutches, and started attacking. Alexandra was about to fight back when the dagger that pierced her body suddenly came to life and stabbed her heart. It was a dagger made from Bert's blood. Alexandra hurriedly used her chi to block Bert's blood, and at the same time barely coped with Madame Gao's fierce attack. She was in a tough spot. At the same time, the others also started to fight. Mercury and Snowman teamed up to deal with one of the 5-finger Bakuto. As for Murakami, he was besieged by Yoshioka and several elite-level vampires. Murakami shouted angrily, "Nobu, you betrayed me, what about your forbearance?" "I don't want to, but I can't control it." Nobu Yoshioka sighed helplessly, but the knife in his hand moved faster and faster. Although Murakami's strength was superb, he was besieged by so many people and soon fell into a disadvantage. There is also the same for Sound of the 5 Fingers. He has it the worst. After being shot by a sniper rifle, broke his thigh and was shot several times again. He fell into a coma. If Bird hadn't said that he wanted them alive, Frank would have killed him with the first shot. That's right, it was Frank the Punisher who shot, with Natasha as an observer next to him. As for the other ninjas of hand, there are 7 or 8 dead, and even if they are not dead, they are not far from death. Daredevil in the dark perceived that the front was full of corpses, like a scene from hell, and his whole body was chilled. Is he on the battlefield? The script is wrong. Shouldn't this be a gang fight? The reason why Hand will lose tonight is because of this. They thought it was a gang fight, but they didn't know that Frank was fighting it as a war. Whether it is a bazooka or a time bomb buried in the basement in advance, they are the top military products produced by Stark Group. After the initial fear, deep anger surged in Daredevil's heart. What did these people take a human life for? Although angry, Daredevil is a little powerless. He can't bear such a big scene as a street hero. It seems that there is only one thing he can do: call the police. The superhero calling the police sounds a bit dark and humorous, but other than that, Daredevil really can't help it. But what makes him depressed is that the surrounding signals are blocked, and he angrily threw his phone to the ground, gritting his teeth, quickly ran towards the sniper's location. It went better than expected. Bert nodded with satisfaction. Although the current situation does not require him to take action personally, to be just in case, and to end the battle as soon as possible, he still stepped forward to besiege Alexandra together. With such a big movement in the dock area, the police are probably already coming. Bert didn't talk nonsense. His arm turned into a 3-meter-long blood sword, and he slashed toward Alexandra. Madame Gao waved her cane and turned into a shadow to attack Alexandra while complaining. "Why don't you call the name of the move now?" Bert replied. "Because some people said that I am a big boss, so I shouldn't shout my moves like a middle schooler." Alexandra is not in such a good mood, as Madame Gao complained. She was already in a tough spot before, and now there is Bert, who is stronger than Madame Gao, joining the fray, and she is in danger. She already got attacked by Wang Bert several times. Extreme sword cuts. It was thanks to Bert's poor fighting skills, otherwise she would have been defeated. Just as Alexandra was trying her best to resist, Bert's blood sword exploded, turning into countless blood arrows and shooting out. Alexandra was shot into a hedgehog on the spot. What's even more terrifying is that after these blood arrows hit Alexandra, they drilled into her wounds like blood snakes, making her scream in pain. Madame Gao smashed Alexandra's knee with her cane, causing her to fall to the ground screaming, and then sigh. "Your ability is much stronger than martial arts. One is fantasy, the other is martial arts. Of course, it's different." Bert's 5 fingers flew out, and 3 of them turned into 3 short spears, piercing Alexandra's hands and right leg, pinning her to the ground. Alexandra screamed miserably, and she no longer had the demeanor of a lady before. While she tried her best to fight against the blood that belonged to Bert in her body, she roared, "Blood God, Madame Gao, you will pay the price." Bert said seriously, "We will indeed pay the price. When I receive your handicraft inheritance, I guess I will be very busy, and I may have to work overtime." Everyone next to him laughed. At this time, the battle was over. Murakami followed in Sawan's footsteps and was seriously injured and comatose. His strength was good, but Nobu Yoshioka lost his life. In the end, Nobu Yoshioka died and Murakami was seriously injured. But Kudo was defeated by both Mercury and Snowman, and the wound on his chest was bleeding like no tomorrow. Although Mercury and Snowman were slightly injured, they looked very excited, and they proved their worth. As for the other ninjas, they were all killed, not a single one left. It can be said that everything went smoothly, just like Frank's previous tactical deduction, but it was not without accident. Daredevil found Frank, and the two fought. Daredevil roared, "What do you think of human life? They are human too, you butchers! This is war, Red!" Frank had a disdainful expression on his face, holding a tactical dagger, and started fighting Daredevil. One of the two had a keen sense of hearing and amazing predictions, while the other had experience in battles and deep-rooted combat skills. Black Widow quietly stood there and was quite surprised at the boldness of the vampire clan to use landmines and bazookas in the heart of America like Manhattan. Are they not afraid that Washington will trouble them? What is there to be afraid of? The big deal is to spend more money. Anyway, it is Han that will die, not the American citizen. There seems to be an accident over there. Snowman, bring a few people to check it out. Bert glanced at Frank and said to Snowman. He nodded and brought a few of his men over to help. Bert turned his attention back to Alexandra. He tried his best to increase the Purple Man virus, and strive to control the opponent as quickly as possible. Alexandra shouted with a ferocious look. Do you think you won? Bert shrugged. Could we still lose? Of course you lose. Han will never lose. Beast, please accept my sacrifice. Alexandra roared in the sky. Her body lit up with a dazzling red light like blood, and then, her whole body quickly turned red and swollen, and the blood spears on the ground were directly crushed and turned back to blood again. Not only that, the blood that Bert put in Alexandra's body was also forced out bit by bit. What's the situation? Madame Gao, you never said anything about this. Bert asked in astonishment, and quickly controlled his blood to hide in Alexandra's organs, so as not to be forced out by her. I've never seen this trick before. Madame Gao was also very shocked. She thought of something and shouted. I understand, Alexandra sacrificed all the souls of those dead ninjas to the beast in exchange for the beast to give her power. How dare she do this? This will make those ninjas unable to revive again, and she will have terrible sequelae herself. This marks the end of part 10 of the story. Blade God of Blood. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.